breaking down UFC 283 in none other than Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. It is the first time the UFC are back in Brazil since Kevin Lee vs Charles Oliveira in March 2020, one of my favourite fights of all time, and it is the first pay-per-view in Brazil since November 2019. So first up, we have the main event between Glover Teixeira and Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill. Old man Glover, we know what he's about. Powerful boxing, great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu wrestling, great ground and pound, as we can see here. Great submissions, super durable, loves to sprawl and brawl. He's also crazy good at finding top position, as we can see here against Anthony Smith. He always prioritizes position over submission and doesn't throw a lot of submission attempts willy-nilly, but instead chooses to soften up his opponents with ground and pound and then snatch the submission when it's there. Apart from that one time against Yuri with the guillotine, as we can see here, I think that all had us screaming. But then next up we have his opponent, Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill. He's known as a striker and a knockout artist. His last 5 wins were all by knockout or TKO. One was overturned to a no contest as he tested positive for smoking the reefer. So no PEDs actually. In terms of his striking, he has a lot of weapons that he utilizes. He switches stances, but is mainly a southpaw and is always looking for the massive straight left as well as a straight right when he fights conventional. Really lunges in with these shots, but because of his great reach, it works out for him. He's also got a mean check right hook. We can just ask Jimmy Crute here, who he dropped with it and then knocked out with it later on in the fight. He also throws he throws quite easily telegraphed, but very, very heavy body and head kicks. Here we can see here, spamming one against Paul Craig. They're quite easy to telegraph because of his wide stance, but they're super heavy all the same. He's also got great knees to the body and head from his tie clinch. In his last few fights, he's always been pushing forward, and he does this really well. He sort of controls and dominates the fight. This can make takedowns a lot harder. His ground game is still a little bit untested, in my opinion. He did get submitted by Paul Craig from a triangle from the bottom and dislocated his arm. Here he is in the triangle, and then here he is in the aftermath. We'll be talking about Paul Craig later. Completely dislocated. He didn't actually tap out to this. He sort of just kept trying to fight back. No rest off it, so shows he's got some pretty good strength and resilience. He won't tap easy. His takedown defense was tested by Thiago Santos, who tried for rounds. He did get held down quite a few times, but Hill made him work really hard for it and got up straight away each time. However, Thiago Santos is not really known for his offensive wrestling, and he's also the owner of possibly the worst tattoo in the UFC, currently in the running against Darren Till's previously girlfriend tattoo that he's only half covered up with the gorilla. So up to you guys which one you think is worse. So how do I think this fight's going to go? Well, it's all going to come down to whether or not Glover can get Hill down and get him down early. Previously, when Glover's fought strikers, he's tried to get them down really, really early in the first round, and not as much in later rounds. This could be for a number of reasons, including making them afraid of the takedown and so more hittable in the process. And so here we go. And he's got really, really powerful takedowns as well. He'll sort of shoot under an overhand right, and to get the double leg or whatever he needs to do. So he's got the ability to get to the ground. And another reason he could get them down early is so he could sap their confidence and gas tank for later in the fight. However, he is very hittable in the process of taking down, and this is where that check right hook of Hill could come in. His durability has usually gotten him through, taking a lot of shots as he's trying to get people down and doing this thing, which is sprawling and brawling. However, Glover's chin does have its limits, as we can see here, tested by Anthony Bumbles Johnson, may rest in peace, and Alex Gustafsson. But they are both really, really heavy hitters. But then again, so is Jamal Hill. Um, Glover does land some really mean shots, especially once his opponent is afraid of the takedown, is maybe dropping their guard. He has lots of his head movement is very rapid, small movements, but lately it hasn't really taken his head off the centre line that much lately, so it hasn't done him much justice. He's still quite hittable despite moving his head. Look, if it does get to the ground, I believe he has the skills to hold him. But there's just so many dangers from the check right hook to the tie clinch that he has to worry about. Um, yeah, so firstly, I wanted to go with Glover due to Hill's untested ground game. But I think that's just my emotion speaking. I really love the old guy winning the title story. I mean, everyone loves when the older guy wins because, you know, makes us realize that, maybe it's not over for us. I actually think seeing young 18-year-old guys like Will Roas Jr. makes me feel depressed about how little I've done. So maybe that's why I'm feeling Glover, but I think Hill's quite athletic and powerful. He might be able to get up in the sprawls and strike his way to a decision or a knockout. Glover is pretty old now, 43 compared to Hill's 31. It's really, really hard one to pick. I'm kind of leaning towards thinking Hill's going to win it, but I'm going to bet with my emotions and go for Glover anyway. That's why I'm MMA's worst better. And then moving on to the co-main event between Davison, the God of War Figueiredo, and Brendan the Assassin Davison, the God of War Figueiredo, and Brendan the Assassin Baby Moreno. This is for the This is a quadrilogy fight for the undisputed flyweight champion. So Davison is the current champ after his last decision win over Moreno, and Moreno has the interim belt after a body kick TK of Kai Kara-France. So both these guys are extremely well rounded. They've both got plenty of submissions, KO wins. So stylistically, there's not a lot of difference. They're both very comfortable on the feet and the ground. I'd say Figgy has the power advantage in striking and maybe even in accuracy as well, whereas Moreno has a speed advantage as well as a clear cardio advantage. In their first fight back in December 2020, Figgy came in very, very confident. He was throwing mean uppercuts from weird distances and all different angles, throwing heaps and heaps of combinations. And every time it went to the ground, he didn't let Moreno settle on him for a second. He would bump his hips and get the fight back to standing where he could keep throwing these bombs. Moreno was looking for shots as well, but struggled as he was being pushed back so much by Figgy's aggression. However, in the end, Figgy seemed quite surprised that he was still there in the end, despite all the punishment he gave him, which is fair enough. Figgy, leading up to this fight, had been fighting this quite reckless, high combos, heavy bomb style, and had been knocking everyone out. He did the same thing to Moreno. It was working just the same. Just Moreno was very durable and didn't go down. So as the fight got on to about the fourth round, Figgy got tired and then ended up taking quite a few shots. And then there was, so Figgy definitely had the first three rounds, fourth obviously Moreno, and then there was a very, very close fifth round, which was scored to Moreno, I believe, which was probably fair enough. However, it came down to a draw as a result of, in the third round, Figgy kicked Moreno right in the cup. Pretty bunny picture that you can see there. Here is the aftermath. He took a few minutes. Apparently his wife was worried for the future of any future children, etc. So, it ended up becoming a draw, and Davison Figueiredo retained the title as he was the champ going in. The second fight, Figgy seemed a lot more tentative, so that confidence he had in the first fight was just sort of seemed to have wilted away. Moreno controlled the fight as Figgy was leading back him up, and even when it went to the ground, Figgy didn't have that desperation to get it back to the feet again, and was kind of letting Moreno set position, which eventually led to the submission victory in the second round. So then Moreno took the belt. So in the third fight, Figgy's game plan was very clear. He attacked the legs early and was utilizing kicks a whole lot more. Um, and he also paced himself a lot more than the first fight. Um, there was much less the crazy combos and high volume from the first fight, which, I mean, I suppose it was a smarter game plan, but I thought those combos were sick. I implore you to go back and watch that first fight. It's a very good fight. But he was more accurate than before, and he scored much more knockdowns. However, he wasn't standing in front of Moreno when Moreno pushed forward, as opposed to the first fight whether he was getting hit or hitting, he was just pushing forward. It looked like his hand speed had been reduced a bit, but he did end up getting the decision victory. Now, for predictions, what's going to happen in this fourth one? Straight away, I'm drawn to Figgy just because of his more power, and I think overall between the first three fights, he's won more of the rounds. However, you do have to factor in the long layoff due to an injury. I think it was to his hand. Then also him being a lot older than Moreno at 35 years old to Moreno's 29 in a weight class that definitely favours the young. Moreno obviously had the win over Kai France, so he's been more active. So this is a really, really, really hard one to pick. I mean, like, it's flip a coin, really. But I think just based on those factors, I'm going to go with Moreno, but who knows? I think also worth considering is Figgy attributed his poor performance in the second fight to opening his own gym and trying to run a gym whilst train a camp. So for the third fight, he trained with Cejudo, where you could see he had a much more calculated game plan with the leg kicks early, the pacing himself, and picking up the pace as the fight went on. However, for this fight, he's back training at his own gym in Brazil, so who's to say he couldn't run into those same issues that he did the first time. However, Moreno's also had coach issues, as his main coach was none other than James Krause, so he's had to change camps as a corner. And his corner as a result, as no one is allowed to get coached by James Krause anymore following the betting scandal. So yeah, another pick 'em. Who knows which way it's going to go? I'm just leaning towards Moreno based on the age and Figueiredo's injury, but yeah, it's a flip a coin. All right, next up we have the feature bout between Gilbert Torino Burns and Neil Magny. So Gilbert is a very well-rounded and well-tested fighter. He comes from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background, but has great hands. Fun fact: he actually started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu by when his mechanic father took payment for a service from a client in 3 weeks of jiu-jitsu training for all of his sons, Gilbert included. And yeah, and he's gone on to win 4 world championships in jiu-jitsu, so was a pretty good deal from his dad. His striking is very, very snappy, and he's great at finding the chin. He is knocking out Damian Maia. And he's got very, very snappy leg kicks. He also loves a Hail Mary overhand right. He's got very powerful, well-timed takedowns. And he has really interesting, real rapid hammer fists where he goes, hop, 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 as he does them. They're quite funny to watch. He's also very durable. He can take a punishment. He has, however, been knocked out twice. in the UFC, once by Dan Hooker and once by former champ Kamaru Usman. And then his opponent, Neil Magny, is extremely tall for welterweight at 6'3". He will have a sizable 9-inch reach advantage over Gilbert, and he also holds the record for the most wins in the welterweight division. He gained this achievement during his most recent win over Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez, where he submitted him late in the first round. However, that's not that representative of how his fights usually go. He has amazing cardio, and most of his wins have been by decision, where he eventually just outworks his opponent due to a superior cardio. I think he's actually a bit pillow-fisted. He occasionally uses his range well, but not consistently. He'll sometimes be sticking and moving, using his range well, and then chooses to then clinch with someone who's a better grappler. But yeah, a lot of the times he has managed to get that W just out of his superior cardio, and he is quite resilient. I implore you to go back and watch his fight with Hector Lombard back in 2016. It is ridiculously entertaining and quite comedic. I think for this one I'm going to go with Gilbert, just as he's got so many more ways to win. He's got power, he's got superior grappling in my opinion. He won't have the cardio advantage, but he can go 3 rounds at pace. If we look at his war with Kamzat. The only way I could see maybe winning this is by simply just getting more volume and strikes and go to a decision, but I think it's super unlikely. I'm going to go with Burns by, could be submission, but I kind of feel like Burns by TKO, ground strikes following a knockdown. But yeah, we'll see. It's quite specific, I acknowledge. Right, and the opener for the main event is Paul the Bear Jew Craig versus Johnny Walker. So Johnny Walker exploded into the UFC after winning the Contender Series. So he exploded into the UFC with 3 first-round knockouts. He established himself quickly as a rising star in the division, but also into an absolute kind of meme of a person. So at his second win in the UFC over Justin Ledet, he narrowly missed a blatant soccer kick to the head. Like if that would have hit, that would have been a definite no contest. And then in his third win over Misha Sakunov, he dislocated his own shoulder, celebrating by doing the worm. So yeah, he's just, and despite, the rising star thing kind of dropped off, but the being a bit of a meme thing has kind of stayed. He's got a very odd, springy, jumping around style, and when he gets knocked out, he looks like one of those like Pringles tubes being opened. So his actual fighting style replicates what he looks like when he's knocked unconscious, which is quite interesting. However, he is extremely powerful in his striking with very, very dangerous knees and elbows. He's very explosive, very strong, he's very athletic. His strength shows a lot in his grappling, where he's not that technical, but he does well in early grappling exchanges just based on his strength. However, he fades quickly, he doesn't appear to have great cardio in the grappling department. In his fight against Krylov, he made Krylov really worked hard for the first takedown, but after he got one, that got easier and easier. He also doesn't protect his chin very well as he bounces around flailing his arms everywhere. I mean, people have said his chin is pretty suspect, but I don't think it's bad as it's made out to be. It's just no shame in getting knocked out by Jamal Hill. Now moving on to Scotland's Paul Craig, the Bear Jew. He's known for his extremely dangerous jiu-jitsu game, especially off his back, with multiple triangle submissions, including wins over the current title contender Jamal Hill. In his last fight, he seemed to lack a bit of confidence in his hands and keep pulling guard, and even pulled a mount at one point, and did quite a bit of that classic butt scooting. He got himself a lot of boos. His ability to get things to the ground through takedowns isn't that great. He usually just clinches and pulls guard, and it works out from either way because he can whip the triangle out from nowhere. He has scored a couple of very clean takedowns against Shogun, but that was a very aging and quite slow Shogun. So I don't think he's going to be able to take Johnny Walker down in the same fashion. However, yeah, what I think is going to happen? Well, Paul Craig has the ability to pull things back well after getting hurt early. But against my heart, I think I'm going to go Johnny Walker. Just as he's shown to be really, really dangerous to people trying to get him down. As we can see here with Ryan Spann, was kind of fumbling for a takedown, and he just absolutely KO'd him with his huge elbows. And Paul Craig has also been knocked out 3 times in the UFC, and one was by a mutual opponent of him and Johnny Walker's, Khalil Roundtree, who, when Johnny fought him, he KO'd in the first round. However, I think if Craig can get it to the ground early, he could sap Walker's energy and power and get the submission win either then or later. But I'm favouring Walker, but not by a lot. I did hear in an interview recently with Paul Craig that he admits he needs to work on his striking and has been doing that a lot for this fight and to stop butt scooting. But I think that could even go to his detriment, because I think if he tries to trade with Walker, it will be to his detriment. But it should be a real good fight and excited for it. Yeah, so that's the main card. But this card, in my opinion, don't let anyone tell you different, is stacked. There's still lots of other things to look out for. On the prelims, we have Shogun Brewer's retirement fight. So he's had an incredible career, and it's in front of his native Brazil, so that's quite special. He's a legend of the game, and one of the last guys who was fighting in Japan for pride to still be in the UFC. We've got Gregory Rodriguez, who is the RoboCop guy who had that horrific forehead injury at that fight night late last year. I don't know if that's going to make his fight any more exciting, but something to look out for. Thiago Moises takes on Melquizael Costa. I mean, any lightweight fight, I'm excited for. Like, they're always just bangers. The skill level is always super high. But these next two are, in my opinion, absolutely must watch. We have Jailton Almeida taking on Shamil Abdurakhimov. I butchered that. But either way, Jailton Almeida is a huge up-and-coming contender. There's been a lot of buzz around him. He's currently on a 12-fight win streak as a pro, and only 2 of those finishes were in the second round. All the other 10 were by first round, so extremely prolific finisher. Yeah, everyone's buzzing about this guy. And then also another must-see one, in my opinion, is Ismail Bonfim versus Terence McKinney. Terence T-Rex McKinney always brings the fireworks, whether he gets finished or finishes in the first round. I heard a stat somewhere recently that the average duration of his last 10 fights has been 1:30. So, must see, in my opinion. Alright, guys, that's my breakdown and picks. Thanks for subscribing, and yeah, enjoy the fights.